Subscribe to Motoroids for the most in-depth and detailed car and bike reviews. Hit that bell icon and you will be notified before everyone else. Hey guys, welcome to Motoroids.com. My name is Amit Changani, and finally, after some wait, we have the G310 GS with us, the much awaited on and off-road motorcycle from BMW. It carries the legendary GS sticker on its tank, and it's one of the finest badges to adorn any adventure motorcycle in the world. However, this is not a proper adventure motorcycle. This one is primarily meant for touring, and it can take you off the road at times when the road ends and you want to do a bit of soft roading. So don't take it for a proper off-roader, but this can do a fair bit of soft roading and some bit of off-roading if the conditions so demand. So let's get done with the specs first. Now, in terms of the engine and the power output and torque, it's pretty much the same as the RR310 and the G310R. And the peak power output is 34 PS with 28 Newton meters of torque. However, the difference is in the gearing. And while the output remains the same, the gearing is such that you'll get that initial pep in the first 3 gears, but the later gears are slightly more stretched out so that the engine is more relaxed when you're cruising in higher gears. And that's what is required, because in shorter gears you'll need that pep, that acceleration from the engine to kick dirt and keep the bike well poised off the road on the dirt. However, once you take it on the road, you'll require it to cruise very nicely in higher gears. So that's how the gearing is. Apart from that, other big changes from the G310R include the fact that the travel on the suspension at the rear and up front is longer as well. So now you have 180 mm of suspension travel at the rear and similar suspension travel up front at inverted forks. The saddle height is also something which is very different from the G310R, which is a very low motorcycle. The seat height on the G310R is 780 mm. This one has 835 mm of seat height. So that essentially means that shorter riders may find this motorcycle slightly difficult to ride. However, there's an important fact to consider here, and that is that the suspension is much softer, and that means that once you sit on the saddle, it sinks a little bit and the seat height reduces to a certain extent, maybe 5 or 10 mm. So that's a bit of a respite. However, the seat height still remains very high. I am 5'10", and I cannot plant my heels into the ground properly, but I think 5'6", and you should be able to ride it. Shorter than that, it would be a bit of a problem. The seating position is very upright and it's very comfortable. I rode it on the road as well, and I believe that it's very comfortable and should encourage riders to go long distance without any second thoughts. This very soft suspension is also going to be of great use, and that's something which makes this motorcycle perfect for long distance touring. This big luggage rack here at the back will come very handy, and you can easily put a top box here and put all your luggage in, and this comes standard. So this is a great accessory which has been thrown in as a standard equipment by BMW, and kudos to them for that. The pillion seat again is rather high. It's not very easy to climb on. However, if you're 5'6" or more, you would be able to swing a leg over it. This luggage rack is going to be a bit of a hindrance, and you'll have to swing it a little more than idle. So climbing up would be a bit of an issue, but once you're aboard, the seat looks pretty firm and it should be usable for medium to slightly long distances, as the luggage rack also doubles up as a grab rail. So that's a great feature that BMW have provided, and something which is very, very appreciable. Suspension, as I mentioned, is very comfortable, and the performance from the engine, it's very punchy, and the character is pretty similar to the G310R while you're accelerating, and the feel that you get on board is a little different. It's not as connected, as stiff, as sharp as the G310R, but the acceleration is right there. Despite this having about 11-12 kgs more curb weight than the G310R, this one is 169 kg as opposed to 158 kgs on the G310R. So the weight is more, but it's not very apparent when you accelerate. However, when you shift into higher gears, when you get into 4th, 5th, 6th gears, you realize that the bike can cruise very easily at 100, 110 without you having to shift down. In the 6th gear, it can easily do 100, 110 all day long, and it'll pull from as low as 45-50 kilometers per hour in the 6th gear. So that really gives it a very long set of legs, and it's a very good cruiser machine. So in that context, while I have not ridden it for multiple days wherein I can comment on the fuel efficiency, but going by the character of the engine, if you're going to be using it for cruising purposes, I believe that the fuel efficiency on the G310 GS would be a bit more than the G310R is what I believe. Now, when it comes to off-roading, when you get off the road and you want to have some fun, kick some dirt, go over the dunes, there are two things which come handy. I've already mentioned the suspension, but apart from that, this front wheel is 19-inch. So that really helps matters, makes the bike a bit more rear biased as opposed to the G310R, which is more front biased. The suspension travel, as I mentioned, is more. Also, one very important factor is that these tires are on and off-road Metzger's 2 runs, and they do a very good job of kicking dirt, as we saw during the day when we used the dirt trail right behind the BMW training center in Gurgaon to test our off-roading skills. And must I say, this motorcycle is pretty impressive off the road, through the sand, off the road, on the humps, through the pebbles as well. This motorcycle held its composure very well. However, this is not the best experience I've had off the road, and as I mentioned, this is not a proper off-roader. This is a soft roader on and off-road kind of a motorcycle, and if you want something which is more hardcore, you'll have to look elsewhere. But this does a decent job, and if you're going to be traveling on the country roads where there are rough patches and you'll be going off the road quite often, the ground clearance, the suspension travel, the 19-inch front wheel and those on and off-road tires are going to come very handy, and that was very evident. The braking is also very sharp, it's solid. The bike comes with dual channel ABS, which is switchable, although it's not as sharp as the G310R, but it's pretty good for the kind of suspension travel it has, and it doesn't feel wallowy when you're braking it hard. It stops on a dime, and with this kind of ground clearance and suspension travel, there are no complaints whatsoever. So for any 300cc motorcycle at this point in time, this has to be one of the best off-roading motorcycles. It's very sturdily built, so you can throw it into bad patches without a squeak, and you would not feel worried about the reliability. This is going to last. The suspension and the other components are built like a tank, and the typical BMW build quality is evident everywhere. There are no rough edges, and I really love how this motorcycle looks and feels when you're on the saddle. The chassis remains the same, but the overall geometry, when you sit on the bike and you hold the handlebars, this one is a bit more relaxed, a bit more upright, and it feels much bigger in the flesh as compared to the G310R when you park the two motorcycles side by side. So the typical Indian mindset in the context of cars and bikes is that the bigger the size, the more the value. So if you are someone who's looking for a larger size for your money, then this motorcycle definitely looks like a proper 600cc or above, and it has the girth, the size and the road presence which will dwarf any other motorcycle in this segment when it's parked next to it. So in that sense, this motorcycle has great street cred and great presence. So when you're riding it, you're going to look good if you are a well-built person. Now, another big question that all of you always ask us is, especially since the RR310, is whether there are vibrations on this motorcycle, since it shares the engine with the RR310. And as I mentioned before as well, the RR310 has a very grunty kind of a engine note. It's not vibrations. A lot of people mistake that grunty engine note to vibrations. That's not the case. The RR310 has very mild vibrations over 6,500 RPM, but they're not worth a bother. On the G310 GS, they're even less, and it's not bothersome at all. However, after 5,500–6,000 RPM, you do feel very mild vibrations on the foot pegs and through the tank as well. But as I've mentioned many times, this engine is not one of the most smooth sounding engines. This engine has a very grunty kind of a character to it. It sounds a little gruff, but that doesn't mean that it's the vibrations. That's the character of the engine. That's the sound that it makes. And you can rev it very hard. It doesn't oppose being revved, and you have to ride it for long distances to understand what I'm saying. So the next time you find this engine on any of these motorcycles, YB, please understand that it's the sound and it's not the vibrations. The exhaust here is similar to the RR310 and the G310R, so not much difference there. The foot pegs are very well built. These are very well finished, and this foot peg here comes with a rubber stud over it, which has been removed right now since we were off-roading all this while. As you can see, the brake pedal also comes with these solid grooves so that you can get a proper grip when you're braking while off-roading. So all of those are bits which make it very off-road friendly. I tried to use the rear view mirrors and they're wide enough, no complaints on that part. And while the width is pretty good, the mirrors themselves could have been a bit bigger is what I believe, especially for the Indian conditions. It would really have helped a little bit, but I'm not complaining. It could have been a little better. The distinctive GS nose is right there, and you get traditional bulbs for the headlight as well as for the blinker. However, for the tail lamp you get LEDs, and the blinkers again are bulbs, so only the tail lamp unit is LED. The headlamp, the front blinkers, the rear blinkers are all bulbs, and that's something that I wanted to point out. One thing that we cannot comment on just yet is the illumination from the headlight. It looks rather tiny, but I cannot comment on that because I've ridden this motorcycle only during daytime, and only after riding it in dark would I be able to let you know whether the illumination on this motorcycle is good enough, because that's very important for a motorcycle which you're going to be using for long distance touring. Another important detail that you'd want to notice is that the engine, the bottom of the engine is covered by this plastic cowl to protect it from the dirt or the stones or pebbles flying onto the engine. So that's a neat touch. So you have fender ending here, and for everything else that's kicking onto the engine, you have this cowl. This entire section is made of fiber, and it helps matters to reduce weight. And despite this being such a big motorcycle, the weight difference is not much, and that's such a big plus when you're riding it off the road, because a heavy motorcycle is all the more difficult to maneuver when you're riding through mud or through sand. So that's something that we really appreciate. Now coming to the instrument console and the switchgear, the quality is right there, and I don't have any complaints whatsoever about the quality of the switchgear. The way these buttons feel, the BMW quality is very, very evident here. This is a typical LCD layout, all digital, with the telltale lights for turn indicators, high beam, low fuel, neutral, warning lamp, ABS on or off, low battery, and engine malfunction. Apart from that, you get a fuel gauge here. The tacho is right here at the bottom, and you get a lot of other features including the speed, the gear engaged, average fuel efficiency, distance to dry, and trip meter, and all that jazz that you require on any modern motorcycle these days. So a very, very usable instrument console. There is no issue with the legibility of it. Even in harsh daylight you can read it, and it's minimal but it's very informative, and there's nothing to complain about here. And only when you compare it with the KTM Duke 390, which comes with a color TFT screen, would you complain. But from a functionality perspective, there's nothing to complain about. Talking specifically about the switchgear, you get a pass light here, high beam, low beam, turn indicators, the button for horn here, and the engine kill switch on the right, along with a push starter button. The difference as compared to the G310R is this button here, which is to engage or disengage ABS, and you essentially have to keep this button pressed for 3 seconds to turn the ABS on or off, and you can turn it on or off on the fly. You don't have to stop the motorcycle, and there is no speed restriction as well, so you can turn the ABS on or off whenever you want, and that comes really, really handy when you're going off the road, especially when you're kicking some dirt and you want to turn hard. It really helps steer the bike faster by sliding the rear wheel, and it's important for this kind of a motorcycle, and thankfully BMW have given an option to turn the ABS off. The fuel tank capacity here is 11 liters, same as G310R, which is not very good from a long distance touring perspective. And if you look at the fuel efficiency, similar to the G310R, which is about 30 kilometers plus minus 2-3 kilometers to the liter, you'll get about 330 to 350 kilometers of range, which is not bad but not great either, especially for a bike which is meant to do very long distances. So a bigger fuel tank here would have been of great use, but unfortunately that's not the case, and that's one big gripe we have about this motorcycle. The fuel tank here should have been bigger than what it is. But all in all, it's a fantastic motorcycle, a very unique proposition, unless you want to compare it with the Himalayan, which I personally believe is not in the same league when it comes to build quality and the sturdiness. This motorcycle feels indestructible when you are taking it off the road. There is no squeak, and it's a BMW, so the quality of the components is right there to be seen. There are no rough edges. You will be a lot more confident about this bike as compared to when you are aboard the Himalayan. I rode the Himalayan as well, and there are some rough edges there, and there have been problems with the Himalayan earlier as well. This motorcycle feels flawless, although at the same time, if you're talking about proper off-road capability, I believe that the Himalayan is a bit more capable in that context. So if you want to do proper off-roading, the Himalayan has a bit more ability, but from a reliability, from a smoothness perspective, from a dependability perspective, I think the G310 GS is the pick of the two, also in terms of power, acceleration, top speed, stability, everything. So how does all of that add up? Now, with an ex-showroom price of 3.49 lakh, Delhi that is, it's not exactly a very economical motorcycle to own. However, it comes with a 3-year unlimited kilometers warranty, which is a great peace of mind. That warranty is extendable to 5 years unlimited kilometers by paying some extra money. And apart from that, the service intervals are very long, so you don't have to go to the service station very often. You have to go to a service station only after 10,000 kilometers. So that speaks volumes about the faith the brand has in the build quality of this motorcycle. And in that context, I believe that this is a very rugged, very solid product. And even though the service costs are expected to be higher than the RR310, I believe that they are not going to be stratospheric. And if you are reasonably well off, you would be able to manage the service costs for the G310 GS. We tried to figure out the cost of service from BMW Motoroids. However, they said that it's variable, and they did not give us an exact figure. I would have wanted to let you know what that price is, but unfortunately that was not shared with me. However, what I can tell you is that the first service is at 1000 kilometers, and after that every 10,000 kilometers, that's 1000, 10,000, and then 20, 30, 40, 50. That's how you get the bike serviced. All in all, it's a very unique motorcycle for the segment. And while the G310R may come across as expensive because it cannot do something very different from the RR310, the G310 GS is a different machine altogether. It's meant to do a lot of things more than the RR310 or the G310R. And in that context, it's a very unique proposition. And I'm quite sure that a lot of people would find this motorcycle very, very inviting. And while the prices could have been a little less, maybe 50,000 rupees less, but then again, this is a BMW, and whether you want that badge or not is entirely up to you. If you want that BMW badge on your motorcycle, you have to pay a price, and the decision is entirely yours. From a product perspective, from its capability perspective, from the way it's been built, I think it's a fantastic product, and full marks to BMW for having created a motorcycle which is light, small, nimble, yet very, very capable in its versatility. So I hope that this video was useful to you. If you found it useful, hit the like button, subscribe to Motoroids, and until next time then, this is Amit Changani signing off. Rev hard, rev free, and ride safe.